Welcome to Dan's Talks. I have as guest today is John Sargent, a journalist and novelist who has republished a book that's just come out called Turning Pages. And tell us a little bit about the book.
Okay, so I spent 40 years as a publisher, and the book is an attempt to take all the best stories of that time, and by just telling the best stories, let that sort of be a memoir form, but not have the stuff in the middle that's sort of the boring stuff. So trying to make it only the exciting parts.
You could do the pictures in the middle.
Well, I do have pictures in the middle.
Well, and this is from what I've read. This is a very unique book. It's not just incidents. It's incidents involving people who want to get published or you want to publish, and who may or may not have sent something in that you like or not over as a sort of referee for what publishing company was it?
Macmillan.
There you go. One of the greats.
Yeah.
So there must be all kinds of stories, gifts, no doubt.
One of the fascinating things about publishing is when people, who have sort of stature in the world or whatever, want to publish a book, they often try for the largest advance, and there's a process that happens where they come in to see you for an hour, and they tell you everything that they want you to know to have you be interested in their book. So there's sort of a jumping off place to have interesting conversations, and some of those lead to there's a lot of famous people. Some lead to no stories at all, and the only ones who are in this are when there's a story that comes out of it, and that's usually when we actually publish them, or something remarkable happens in the course of the hour and a half you talk about their life and everything they've done to date. Something odd occasionally does happen.
Give me an example of both of those, one at a time.
Okay. I'll give you the I had an odd meeting. It wasn't actually it was an advice meeting. Occasionally you get asked by people to advise their famous clients on writing books. And so I was asked to talk to Michael Jackson about what it would take to write a book. And I had this remarkable time with him that was made remarkable at the end, when the guy I was with was our marketing director, and he was a really big guy, and I mean a big guy. And so I was a big Michael Jackson fan, and I just started, toward the end of the meeting, we just started to talk, and we're having a good time. And I asked him about, to do the dancing that he did. I said, how flexible do you have to be? And were you born with that flexibility? So he starts to talk about how flexible he is. And John, the marketing guy, he's sitting on the couch, and he's this big guy. And he said, well, I'm really flexible. And Michael turned and look at him and say, really? And he said, yeah. He said, I can put my foot behind my head. And I looked at Michael and I said, Michael, I don't know about you, I'd like to see that. Would you like to see that? And Michael goes, oh, yes. And he gets all pumped up. And he actually jumps up out of his chair. And so, by God, John, the marketing guy, sits there, takes his foot and puts it over his head and behind his neck. And Michael was so excited by just seeing that. I mean, he was like jumping up and down. It was just a fantastic little tiny moment. And so that's a page. That's like a page and a half in the book, right? It's just a little sort of piece of magic that happened.
How many pages are there then?
With the photo insert acknowledgments all in, it's close to 300 pages, but the actual reading is 260.
What's an example of the other I requested?
Oh, the other, I won't tell the whole story because it's very, very long and fascinating. But when I first went to Simon and Schuster, Dick Snyder did a deal with the Duchess of York to do kids' books. And what that turned into was a 5-year sort of, they call it a relationship with Sarah. And, going over, I have to go over and go to the Buckingham Palace for author meetings, and she coming here, and what that was like, when she was at the peak of her infamy, not her fame, but her infamy. It was when they were calling her, big fat Fergie in the press. And when it was, it was nasty.
Yes, it was.
And to sort of be with her through that stuff, it was fascinating.
Yeah. How did she handle it, I guess?
But I like her an awful lot. She can be difficult, all that, sure. Boy, she got a short straw. The situation that she was put into was extraordinarily difficult.
Yeah.
And she worked hard. She really did. She worked really hard to make her books work. And she didn't put on airs and all that stuff,
I'm not sure if it was her, but I think I remember her writing about how difficult it was to get to the other part of the palace in the middle of the night for food. If you want a snack, it was like a big deal.
I actually went to her apartment in the palace.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic thing. You walk down this hallway that's like these huge portraits of, former kings and queens going down one side, and this big wide hallway and these huge arch windows. It's the front of Buckingham Palace that looks out over the parade grounds and the fountain and all that. And you walk down the length of it, and suddenly there's a door, and knock on the door, hey, come on in, and it's her apartment. It's wild.
Wow. What was the most successful book that you signed on to do and then did?
Depends on how you measure success, which is
It's in books sold.
okay. For books sold, again, front list or back list, right? So there's books that sell forever, and there's books that sell fast up front. And the one that sold the fastest up front was Fire and Fury by Michael Wolff. When Donald Trump tried to stop the publication of it, if you remember that, but that was selling at its peak, was selling, I don't know, I think it was 23,000 copies an hour on Amazon at its peak.
That book, as I recall, was about him showing up at the White House with unannounced and just wandering around the halls for days without anybody knowing why he was there.
It's true. It's true. He got put in. He got put into, I tell the whole story about how that happened, right? And he got authorization to go in there, and there was so much chaos that nobody knew who had approved him to go in, and nobody asked him to sign documents. Nothing. The guy he hung out in there for 200 days. The White House, and not just the White House, in the West Wing. And
did he sleep there? Did he sleep there, or did he have to?
No, they gave him a place to sit, and the guy had everybody said, how much of that was true and made up. The guy had a tape recorder. People were happy to go on tape with it.
So how did he present himself as a journalist who was wanted act? How did he get past the people, or were there no people that he had to get past?
he was a journalist, and everybody knew he was a journalist. And in those early years, early days of the Trump White House, do you remember that the level of chaos was extreme? And there were these different warring power factions, which is probably always true in the beginning of an administration. But in this case, you could see it all happening, right? Because everybody's leaking to the press and there were all these things. And Michael was just in the middle of it. Everyone he talked to knew he was a journalist. He didn't try to pull any of that sort of, hey, this is, I'm just a guy here. He told them it was for a book.
What was the book that has sold the most over time? Besides the Bible.
If I had to, there's a bunch of contenders, and I never looked at that, right? I never looked at accumulated sales, but we have a book, Chicka Chicka Boom Boom, which is a children's book.
I know that book.
Yeah, and that just it has sold since its first day and keeps selling. And that was when I was at Simon and Schuster. I was probably published that book. I was 31 years old, so that's 30. It's been selling for all these years. And I got to imagine it sold millions and millions and millions of copies. And there's book like Ender's Game, which I wasn't there when it was published, but I was there for the all the anniversary editions and all of that. That sold a ton. There's a lot. Yeah, Atul Gawande's Being Mortal sells a lot every year. That sells a ton of books. So there's a lot of them. The Jordan Wheel of Time series of books, 13 books, that sold a ton. So there's, hard to know, I guess, is my answer.
How many years were you publisher at Macmillan?
I was the CEO for 24 years.
It's a long time.
Yeah.
And how long, and you retired when? How long ago?
2.5 years.
Probably the next day started writing this book.
No, it took it was a little while. I wrote it. I had a great grandfather who wrote it. He was a publisher, and he wrote a book for his family. And I thought, I had some free time. I thought maybe I'll do that. And what happened is it was announced that I was leaving, and then I thought, what will I give to the people at Macmillan to say goodbye? And I thought I would do a bunch of stories, and I would tell them stories that if they read all the stories together and they thought about it, it would define the culture of the company. So I chose things that happened that were representative of why it was a special place to work. And that got me writing those stories, and I enjoyed writing them. And then I thought, well, now I can do the ones for the kids too, and use some of the ones I wrote for the company, use a few of them. And then it just sort of went from there. And initially I wasn't going to be published, and then people really encouraged me to go ahead and publish it. And I thought, well, why not? Give it a shot.
Tell me when you first came out here and how, because you were in the city, this was an obviously place to unwind, I suppose it might be. What do you enjoy doing, and what town are you living in, and how long have you been coming out here?
So my mom and dad got separated when I was little, and I moved she moved to Wyoming. And so I would come visit my dad for a month every summer, and he had a place in Watermill. Mm-hmm. So that started when I was guess 7 was when I started coming here. So that was almost 60 years ago at this point. And that was Watermill. I got a house after I moved to New York. I got a house in Bridgehampton here, and I surf. So I spend an awful lot of my time in Montauk.
Oh, surfing. You fish? Oh, surf.
Surfing, yeah.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah.
I was just remembering with what happened, as you may or may not know, is the wealthy folks in Wainscott refused to accept an increase in the cost of the school, and so they cut costs. And it reminded me of the very dramatic era. I think you were here for it, when the people tried to shut the Bridgehampton school down, and they succeeded. And it was going to be closed, but the marginalized people sort of rose up and said they wanted a recount and a revote, and there were different people who didn't vote and this and that, and they did. And then the school was saved. It's now a remarkable school, as you know. I thought you'd know about that.
No, I didn't. I would, until, wow, when was it?
Might have been
Probably
before.
87, 88 was when I moved out here, when I had a place out here.
That was after. I'm sorry. Then we'll scrub that. We'll just. What is so famous about Ditch Plains surfing? Because I go out there, I don't see very big. I'm not a surfer, although I've been here. I've been here since before surfing. That was how.
Whoa, okay then.
But by the time everyone started doing it, I just couldn't get up. I was already out of the range of doing it, and I never was much of an athlete anyway. But I never thought of Ditch Plains as a spot to surf, and I wondered why it's so important.
So it's one of the most consistent surf breaks on the East Coast, and the reason is there's rock there. So if you go left of the jetty on the Ditch Plains beach, you'll notice it's all rock, not sand. And the rock extends out, and that goes all the way around the point, right? So,
right. Yep.
So depending on the swell direction and the wind direction, you can surf anywhere from the point all the way around the Ditch Plains. Oh. And because it's rock, so it doesn't shift as much. Like everywhere else on Long Island, the sand shifts and the waves are breaking on sandbars. Out there, it's more like a point break or a reef break than a sandbar break, and that generally makes for really long rides and at the point when there's hurricanes and stuff, big waves.
When they did the revetment repairs, which has just been completed, so many surfers said this was going to ruin surfing. Did that happen?
Hard to tell, right? Because you got to wait for the swell to come, and now the swell's going to come. The swell, the people who really are really good surfers care about the big wave swell when it comes in. So I don't think I was out there 2 weeks ago in Turtle Cove, which is just this side of the point. And in Turtle Cove, the wave wasn't changed at all that I could tell. The wave hadn't changed at all, but it was a relatively small day. It wasn't a big day. And the question will be when the big waves come, does it change?
You have to interfere.
You should go if you have. Wait for like one of the days when the hurricane swell comes. Well, it'll be on the radio, large waves, rip tides, Wow. Go out to the point and see what it looks like out there, because it's fantastic.
Is Turtle Cove on the ocean, on the bay side or the ocean side?
Turtle Cove is on the east side as opposed to the west side. So it's underneath the lighthouse on the east side.
Oh, on the east side. On the south, so it's on the ocean.
Yeah, it's on the ocean.
The harbor seals on the rocks.
Yeah, the harbor seals on the rocks are more often on the other side.
Oh, yeah.
They're on the western side.
What else do you like to do when you're out here? Are you retired now out here and pretty much?
I do a lot of bike riding, and I do a lot of time, sort of wandering around on the beach, socializing. I spend a lot of time in Montauk in between surfing. So I spend that's the physical side. And other than that, I enjoy, I do a lot of work, oddly still. And I guess I could say I'm underemployed as opposed to retired. So I still have a ton of work I got to do. So I do that.
What do you do? What work?
Oh, I do. Well, I have the book, which is actually, was a fair amount to write it and is actually a fair amount of work to publish it. So I'm doing that right now because that's
another one. So you're doing
I'm doing this one, right? So the process, you record the audio book and you have to, try to generate demand through social media. There's a lot of stuff you have to do. So I've been doing that. I still go to Wyoming. My mom died and I have her estate in Wyoming to clear up. So I spend a ton of time out there and I just took on the job of being the chairman of the Ocean Conservancy. So I
Nice.
have a lot of work doing there. So I have, and I still consult a bit in publishing here and there. So I not consulting, but I have a lot of friends who call me and ask for advice, so I help them.
Uh,
So I'm busy, yeah.
Well, thank you for being on this podcast. It's over now because they say that after 20 minutes, people don't want to hear the same thing.
They don't want to hear us carrying on for more than 20 minutes.
They're going to poke their phone and off you'll go. So
Okay.
it's nice talking to you.
Pleasure to talk to you.
No.
Okay. Take care.
I'll be in touch. Bye-bye.
Bye.